So I just want to welcome everyone to our webinar today. We're going to get to do a really deep dive into Hapé with Mariah Gannessa. So Mariah, it's great to have you here. Thank you for joining us for today's workshop.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be with you and the Third Wave community and the Four Visions community. It's a wonderful synergy. I want to just welcome everyone who's tuning in. Thank you for taking time out of your day to come for this beautiful encounter. I'm really looking forward to this conversation and connecting with everyone from all over the world. It's great to see so many people tuning in from all over.
So in today's webinar, we're going to do a little one-on-one on Hapé. Mariah is really going to take the floor a little bit about the Psychedelic Coaching Institute. We train industry-leading coaches and practitioners to master the skill of psychedelics for individual growth and collective transformation. I've seen several of our alumni in the chat right now, and I'm sure there will be more who haven't said hi yet, but Will, Mindy, and Liz, and Mike, and many others. A little bit about myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Paul Austin, the founder of Third Wave, the Psychedelic Coaching Institute, and the nonprofit, the Microdosing Collective. I published a book on mastering microdosing, and my work has been featured in many places. So for those of you from the Four Visions community, welcome. It's really great to have you here. And Mariah is the founder and CEO of Four Visions, a global platform protecting Indigenous knowledge through ethical commerce, education, and cross-cultural partnerships. She's also the president of Magic Fund, supporting the Amazon's peoples, cultures, and ecosystems. And she spent over a decade apprenticing with the Inca tribe of Putumayo, Colombia. She's a devoted steward of the Amazon, bridging ancient traditions with modern healing to expand access to plant medicines and amplify Indigenous voices worldwide. We will have a recording. I know there are a couple of questions in there. We will have a recording. So if you can't make the full thing, no worries. We'll send you the recording afterwards. And the flow that we will cover today is going to be a little bit about the sacred origins and cultural context of Hapé, understanding a little bit more about the medicine, modern applications for practitioners, coaches, and guides, safety and contraindications. We have a special offer from Four Visions and the Psychedelic Coaching Institute. And then we'll have about 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. So Mariah and I are going to talk for about 35 minutes or so, have a little bit of a dialogue and discussion, and then we'll open it up for Q&A at the end. So Mariah, I want to start a little with your introduction to Hapé. So you spent over a decade with Indigenous communities in the Amazon. Can you tell us a little bit about how you were first introduced to Hapé and what drew you to this medicine?
I was first introduced by Indigenous medicine man from Brazil who was traveling to the States, and I had the opportunity to go and receive Hapé from him. I had no idea what I was about to experience. I had already been working with plant medicines, and my teachers at this time had told me that there was this opportunity to receive this special healing medicine from an elder who was traveling through. And it was a very chance experience, and the timing aligned. So I showed up, and little did I know I was about to get a deep initiation with the first application I ever received of Hapé. We'll go into this more, but there is a whole range of dosage and ways in which to work with Hapé. And traditionally, the Indigenous peoples from Brazil who steward this medicine do serve very, very large doses. And so my first dose of Hapé was nearly a mound that covered the entire palm of the hand, served into both nostrils. And I definitely wasn't standing up by the end of it, but I came out the other end, and it was a very profound encounter that, of course, changed the course of my life dramatically.
That sounds like, I'm even getting a little bit of the sort of sweat thinking of how intense that must have been. At that dosage, that is a psychedelic in and of itself. And that's what we'll kind of go a little bit into. It feels like a lot of the modern use of Hapé is more microdosing in comparison to how the Indigenous peoples use it. So tell us a little bit about the role of Hapé in traditional Indigenous ceremonies. What context is hapé often used in, and where are its roots traditionally?
So hapé is a sacred tobacco snuff mixed with other herbs and plants. It could be roots, seeds, leaves, depending on the tribe and tradition. This hapé medicine is found in many different tribes of the Pano-linguistic root from Brazil. So as many as 20, 25 different indigenous communities work with this medicine. They each have their own unique recipes for the hapé, and they have their own traditions. They have their own songs and practices. But generally speaking, this medicine is for these hapé tribes, their primary medicine of communion, and the ways in which they work with the medicine is very much in a profound ceremonial context, and they utilize it not so frequently, because when they do go to apply the medicine, it is a very, very strong dose and utilized in unique points in someone's personal journey to cut energetic cords, to do profound cleansing and spiritual purification. And so if we speak about the traditional use and origin use, this hapé is very deeply revered because of its strong power to cleanse, to purify, to let go of the past and start anew. And so the hapé ceremony or ritual within the Brazilian tribes is very much done with a lot of respect, reverence, preparation. There are different plants, baths, and smudging agents that are used to prepare the space and to open the ritual to commune with the hapé. And when someone is served hapé by an elder or a shaman from the communities, it's generally done with a lot of preparation and thought put into it of why this person needs the hapé, what they're going through in their life to receive this experience, and with a lot of prayers put in to support the person with their connection with the medicine.
So part of what's coming up now in the conversation is the sort of tobacco itself, right? Because tobacco is really the base of hapé. And I read a really illuminating book a few years ago that was written by Jeremy Narby about the relationship in Amazonian indigenous communities between tobacco and ayahuasca in particular, and that they really do go together. And with the Shipibo in particular, we see that with mapacho. That mapacho is often smoked or used for protection and clearing, or to deepen some of the visions and the journey. Yet hapé as a snuff is quite different than tobacco. And I'm curious, how is it that hapé, how is it different than sort of these traditional commercial tobacco products that we use in the West? And how is it that the ritual surrounding hapé maybe mitigate some of the potential addictive properties that some people may associate with tobacco?
So tobacco is a powerful plant teacher, a very, very powerful medicine. And the best way that I can describe tobacco from my 12 years of deep study with this plant is that tobacco has the power to heal, but the same power can be manipulated, distorted, and can also cause harm. And so we see that in the duality of the way in which the West, who colonized and commercialized the tobacco growing, and then introduced incredibly harmful and toxic chemicals into commercially produced tobacco to create a product that is cancer causing and has wreaked havoc upon the health of an entire people, right, and culture. So that is, the manipulation that comes with this medicine when it is not utilized in prayer, when it is not seen as the power plant that it is, and when it is not given and treated with reverence. On the other hand, when it is given that reverence, the medicine of tobacco has a profound healing power. And so the tobacco is such an incredible teacher because tobacco teaches us that discernment and teaches us what it means to be in right relationship with a medicine. Now, does that mean that these sacred medicines, whether it be mapacho or Hapé can't be abused. No, those can be, and we'll talk about that as well. But even within that abuse or the tendency to utilize it outside of its intended use, we are given a profound teaching from the spirit of the tobacco. And so I believe that the tobacco, whether it be in the form of smoking it in sacred prayer or whether it be in this ceremonial snuff, is an incredible ally for those who feel called to it. Hapé and tobacco in general, it's not a plant for everyone. There are certain people who have sensitivities to nicotine or tobacco, or simply don't feel called to that plant. And so, our purpose today is by no means to claim that hapé or tobacco is right for everyone, but simply to educate and help people to understand a little bit more about what it is and how to work with it in right relationship. One thing that I have truly found with the hapé is that it offers a tremendous portal into knowing ourselves and spiritual study, and can be an incredible complement for the person who is searching for that type of energy in their lives. And it really is this beautiful opportunity to come into communion with a sacred plant teacher and a plant spirit. That being said, tobacco does have nicotine in it. Hapé does have nicotine in it. The hapé comes from a combination of various plants, like I mentioned. The primary medicine in the hapé is a ground tobacco, Nicotina rustica. This is a native tobacco that grows in the jungles of the Amazon and is utilized for the base of the hapé across all the tribes. However, this hapé is grown, the tobacco, the Nicotina rustica, it's grown and cultivated organically with intention, placing prayers, making offerings to the land, giving thanks to the spirit of the tobacco. It's never grown to with chemicals or to induce higher contents of nicotine like we see in commercialization and cigarette production. So the intent is so different. And if I was to sum up my answer to your question in one word, I would say it comes down to intent. And that really is the teaching of the sacred tobacco and the spirit of the tobacco.
Intent matters a lot, right? And tobacco or hapé, when used with intent, can be an ally in both the healing and our process of growth and purging and waking up and even energy and all these different things. So I'd love to go into a few more of the particulars around hapé. You've mentioned already that tobacco is the ground up tobacco is the main base, but it's not just tobacco that is in hapé. So I'm curious, what goes into making hapé, and how many different varieties exist, or even what are maybe some of the main varieties that For Visions carries in particular?
So as a plant medicine practitioner, the different herbs that are utilized in hapé was really one of the elements that really drew me to the spirit of the hapé. It really fascinated me how there were so many different plant teachers that wove with tobacco, depending on the tribe that prepared the medicine, depending on the use and the different intentions that were placed into the medicine. This same basic formula could be utilized in so many different ways. And so as I mentioned, the ground tobacco is the primary ingredient. And then depending on the formula, there are many other plants that are added in. I mentioned that these can be roots, ground root. It can be seeds, ground up seeds. And it can be bark. It can be leaves. It can even be flowers. So they utilize all different types of the plant, the flower, the tree, and they utilize many, many different species of plants. Like more than 40 different species of plants are utilized in different preparations of hapé. Typically, you'll see no more than 2 to 3 different plants in one particular hapé blend, but there are some tribes like the Nukini that will use as many as 7 different herbs in one particular hapé blend. Some of the plants that they utilize are utilized in other ways as well within the tribe. So We have so many different plants here. And one thing to also clarify is they're actually utilizing the ash of these plants. So it's the ground tobacco with the ash of these other forest plants, which makes up the hapé. Some of the common plants that we might recognize that they utilize would be things like mint, eucalyptus, which are both utilized for the respiratory system to open the lungs. Obviously, physically, we're familiar with the benefits of both mint and eucalyptus. Spiritually, they also help to open our spiritual capacity, to help us to open the heart, to breathe, to bring that spiritual vitality and the breath of life into our beings and into our physical bodies. And also other plants that we're familiar with as well, like roses can be utilized, or alfavaca, which is a cousin of basil or tulsi. So these are plants that we have heard about and that they utilize in their recipes. And they each bring a unique energy, both physically as well as spiritually and emotionally, depending on the prayer that is utilized to prepare the hapé. Then there are things like cacao, where the pods of the cacao are also utilized with the tobacco, and that's an incredibly powerful combination. Or bobinsana, which maybe is a plant that's less known, but this is a medicine also of heart opening, and a shrub that grows near the fresh waters, and a sacred master plant. So again, when it's combined with tobacco, it's very powerful. Snuff that can be very supportive for working on healing the heart, themes of inner child, forgiveness, abandonment wounds, very deep medicine to work with in this context. We also have a beautiful medicine that we source that actually contains propolis in it from the bees, from the Amazonian bees. And so there we're getting a lot of medicine and blessings from the immune system and fortifying and strengthening our physical body. And so depending on the hapé, we can be working on the physical, the spiritual, or the emotional bodies, or a combination of the three. And so in this way, it's a really beautiful thing to be able to work with a specific hapé based off of what you're needing in that moment. And you might discover a favorite, or one that is really calling to you for that particular process that you're going in through at that time. And then you might find later on that a different hapé is calling to you, and you might not work with that other one for a while. And so we could also talk a little bit about relationship with hapé for carrying it and working with it for long-term use as well. But it's a very interesting thing to be able to connect with the spirit of the different blends and how to work with them in a way that really complements the spiritual practice and nourishes us as we walk the plant path.
So yeah, I'd love to go into a little bit more about understanding the medicine. I did a brief poll, and about 80% of the people here have worked with hapé before. But for the 20% of those who haven't, when we work with hapé, what is experience? And if I could say one thing about this, it's often that it's one thing to describe it, it's another thing to experience it, and it's sort of like sex, in that you can talk about it all day, but if you don't actually experience it and know what it's like, then it's really hard to describe. So, but we have a great expert with us on hapé, and so I'm curious, like, when we're working with the medicine, what's happening in our brain, what's happening in our body, what's happening in our consciousness, what sort of reactions or impact can we potentially expect when working with this sacred medicine?
Yeah, wonderful. So this hapé experience is very unique. As many of us probably know, one experience with hapé can be completely different than another experience with hapé. So there are many different factors involved, and that's part of the mystery of this medicine, that the way the hapé works is it's going to bring up whatever is present for you in that moment. One of the incredible benefits of working with this medicine is it clears any heaviness that you're carrying. And so in one moment, you might have one experience where you feel a deep, deep release or clearing. And then in another moment, you might have a completely different experience with it, where you're feeling more the benefits of protection, of grounding, of calming. So for those who have never experienced the hapé, it is a snuff, and it's traditionally blown up the nostrils, one nostril at a time, or utilizing a double nostril applicator where you apply both nostrils at once. I have here a tepi to show what it looks like. And this is the side that goes inside the nose, and this is the side for the person who applies to place it in the mouth, where it is blowed up the nostrils. So with the hapé, the first experience that we feel when we encounter the hapé is that it stings. It goes up the nostrils, and it's a burning sensation that might feel very overwhelming. And at this moment, it's the connection with the tobacco, with our entire brain and spiritual vessel, and it's an incredible encounter that we have at that first application. Sometimes if we are receiving one nostril at a time, it can be very difficult to muster the strength to receive the hapé in the second nostril. However, it's very important that the medicine is applied to both sides for balance to complete the process. And so we always recommend that you apply both sides no matter what, so that you can encounter and have the experience in the way that it is intended. So this intense burning sensation is perhaps one of the first and most notable things about experience with the hapé. After that, you will experience a calming in the body, and the hapé goes working in all the different corners of your being. And one of the most common commentaries about working with the hapé is that it brings a deep, deep calm to the nervous system, to the mind. It stills the thoughts. So once the medicine is applied, there's like a moment where you drop into a profound silence and stillness. And so this stillness is an incredible ally, as all of us know, right? And we're always looking for stillness. And so whether it's hapé, whether it's breath work, whether it's yoga, meditation, there's so many tools and resources that we have in our lives where we look for this place of stillness, because it's from that place that we can receive clarity. We can really receive the downloads, the understanding, and have that period of time to reflect and to organize our energetic field, our mind, the garden of our mind. And so this is one of the biggest gifts that the hapé offers us. It's a place of connection with the spirits of nature. So in this stillness that takes place when we receive the hapé is a place for us to dialogue with the creator, a moment where we can take a break or respite from the noise and the energetic movement that's happening all around us throughout our day, and drop in. And in this moment of connection, we can receive or tend to our prayers, our what we're holding on our altar, in the depths of our inner dreams and aspirations. So the hapé becomes a profound portal or a bridge to nourish our spiritual encounters with creation, with life, with nature. And that is really how it is intended to be utilized, and how it is intended to be worked with from this place of reverence and prayer. And so this experience can last anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 minutes to longer. It really depends. And some people, depending on their sensitivity, could really feel the hapé for a couple hours. And so that's why it's really important, especially if you've never worked with hapé, to utilize it in a setting where you really have the space and the container to experience it in its totality. Ideally, if you're working with it for the first time, to be served by someone who knows what they're doing and who has experience with the hapé, and they can hold that space for you. So even though it's not a psychedelic in the traditional sense, it really does require a tremendous amount of respect, experience, and knowledge to hold the container of facilitating hapé and serving hapé. And different reactions can happen too, which is important to speak to. Someone who has a really regular or long-term experience with hapé might not experience these things, but for someone experiencing hapé for the first time, it's common to vomit, to purge. And this purging is very similar to any other type of purging that happens in plant medicine, where it's a deep spiritual cleansing, physical cleansing, and emotional release. And then it can also produce nausea for a certain period of time. You might need to go to the bathroom. You might have an emotional release where you're crying and have, tears. There might be the heat or cold, and you might need a blanket or need to go outside and get some fresh air. So there's all these different elements that are possible reactions to the medicine. These are all normal, and these are all how this medicine works to cleanse, to purify, to organize our energetic spaces. And they're all very sacred. Each one of these experiences is very profound and provides this cleansing that we're speaking about. But for this reason, it's important to always do the hape in an environment where you can have this experience and honor the fullness of the medicine and the power that it carries. And so it's really recommended to utilize hape in a ceremonial space, to light a candle, to pass some smudge before you apply the hape, to have a moment of prayer and intention, to have a bucket next to you in case you do vomit. If it's someone's first time, having a blanket or a bed where they can lie down is recommended. And the more you can really be prepared for that, the more that you're going to be able to open and surrender and, give yourself to the totality of the experience.
Yeah. So you mentioned the tepe, which is the long one to serve others. I also went and got my caripe. This is one that I got from Brave Earth, which is where we host our intensives in Costa Rica. And it's a fun little jaguar. It's a stone one, in fact. And so the caripe is sort of a self-serve. So you might serve like this. And some of these caripes can be bigger. Some are like this one, a little bit smaller. And it feels like, this sort of leads into my next question, which is, how does hape fit into contemporary practices for those from the West? Because, for example, with our intensives for our practitioner training program, we have an individual there who often introduces people to hape. He will have it out. People can ask questions about it. They can get served a little bit to experience what it's like. And for many folks who are part of our practitioner training program, it's the first time they're experiencing hape, including some folks who are here with us live today. And yet there's a big jump from being served hape to being responsible for serving hape, and that's becoming also more common and prevalent. So for the practitioners in the audience today, how do we navigate that in terms of working with hape on a personal level, and then also working with hape maybe in our own client work when we're supporting people through plant medicine?
I believe that hape can be an incredible ally and complement to practitioner work and facilitation. That being said, it's very delicate and does require a tremendous amount of awareness for the power of the experience, and it should not be done lightly. So it's very delicate in the sense that I recommend that before someone applies and is applying other people, that they develop a profound relationship with the hape themselves. Because when you develop a unique relationship with the medicine, you begin to understand a little bit more about how it works, how and when to utilize different blends, how to apply, and you learn all of that by applying yourself. And so it's my personal opinion that one should study and work with the hape on their own for a long period of time. And I'm not going to say what that is, because each person needs to determine that within themselves. But when you feel ready and when you have developed a relationship with the hape where you feel that the hape is giving you permission to serve, and you feel that within your own being, that is when you can begin to integrate hape into your facilitation practices. And within that context, it still needs to be done with a lot of care, recognizing that while the hape might be an incredible tool for you, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the right thing for every single person who walks through your door. And so you need to be able to learn how to screen for that, and what type of person is going to be a good fit for the hape. So there's a few things that you can look for here. When it comes to physical body constitution, you can look to see about the person's physical constitution, whether or not they can withhold and withstand the strength of the tobacco. Another thing that you can look at is their emotional willingness and readiness. Once you explain what it is, to really tune in and see, is this something that they want to experience, or is there resistance or fear or unsureness within their being? Because that same resistance can cause an extremely strong experience for someone, simply by their own resistance and insecurity about having the experience. When it comes to medical screening, there's not too many contraindications to the Hapé, but particularly high blood pressure is one that is good to ask about. And typically we don't want to serve Hapé to someone with high blood pressure. There are circumstances where we might, but again, this comes from really understanding how the Hapé works, being prepared to care for someone and having the skill sets to treat someone if they do have a really, really strong experience. And other than that, really asking also about their tobacco history is also really beneficial. So if someone has smoked cigarettes for their whole life, they're probably a really great candidate for Hapé. If they have never touched tobacco in their whole life, or they tell you about that one time where they smoked a cigarette and they vomited for an entire 24 hours, they're expressing that they have a high sensitivity to tobacco, and they're probably going to have a strong reaction to the Hapé. Does that mean that you can't serve them at all? No, but that's really where the dosage comes in. And especially when we're talking about serving other people, it's really better to begin with very, very small doses to really understand how the person is going to react. And then, if that's a relationship that they want to cultivate, you could encourage them to start their own personal practice. And that could be a way for them to increase their dosage in a way where they know their body and they can really gauge that and study the experience. It's not that having strong experiences are not a good thing with the Hapé. The strong experiences with the Hapé are incredibly profound, but we also have to remember that when we're the first person introducing this medicine to someone, there's a lot of different factors involved, and we want ultimately them to have a good relationship with plant medicine, and so we want to ensure that when they go home, they're feeling good about the experience they had. So it's really just about evaluating, having discernment, and again, I really feel that it comes back to beginning with your own personal practice.
So to deepen this a little bit, you've talked around this, but just to get to the nut of it, what types of clients or situations may Hapé be beneficial for and helpful for, in terms of, what sort of context may it be useful? And you mentioned before, Hapé isn't right for everyone. It's also not right for every situation. I mentioned in the chat, if we only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And that's typically a mindset that we want to avoid with any type of psychedelic or plant medicine work, right? We want to have a toolbox where, depending on the context, we can utilize different tools. And so I'm curious, when might Hapé be appropriate for someone to weave into a plant medicine context?
I really believe that this comes again back to cultivating a personal relationship with the Hapé. And it's not because I'm gatekeeping, but because truly, in order to discern when the Hapé is a good fit, the Hapé will speak to you and tell you that it's time to offer it. And you'll know not just who to offer it to, but when. And those moments are so key, especially when you're utilizing Hapé within a different type of medicine ceremony where there are other plants involved. And of course, that also depends on the tradition or the practices that you're adhering to within the context. But truly being able to cultivate that unique relationship with the Hapé is so vital with this medicine, because it will inform and guide you in integrating it into your practice. That being said, if we do want to look at some cases where Hapé would be an incredible complement, I find that the Hapé is really helpful when it comes to pattern disruption. And so if we are working with someone who is having a really hard time getting over the hump for something, whether they don't want to see something or there's resistance to wanting to make a change in their life, whether they are being held down by blockages of the past and really wanting to step forward into a new chapter of their lives. I find Hapé to be incredibly beneficial. I find it to be an incredible ally when working with addiction as well. And that's because the Hapé offers us a ritual that we can utilize on a regular basis and provides that check-in for people who tend to go and resource themselves with other coping mechanisms or crutches. And so for someone who is transitioning or looking to heal an addiction, Hapé can be a really, really good fit to help that person instead of checking out and using whatever it is that they are utilizing as a crutch and an escape, to train their beings to work with the Hapé as a way to reconnect. And so it's a very powerful repatterning that takes place for people who choose to work with it in this way, because instead of escaping, we are utilizing a sacred sacrament to drop in and to have a moment of presence and attention. And so this is one of the best cases that I have seen tremendous amount of success with in the realm of addiction. And I also find it to be an incredible pattern disruptor, or something that can really open someone's consciousness up if it's someone who is very resistant or doubtful that plant medicines and psychedelics can help, or that can have any effect on them. So that could be someone who has a lot of PTSD or has trauma, or is just at this place in their life where they are so stuck in their darkness or their pain that they just can't even imagine that there could be some light. It could be someone who is just living and is completely asleep and is just looking for maybe curious, and so we don't always recommend like people who are just like curious, like they just want to try it, to like work with psychedelics. But the Hapé could be a good fit in that experience where someone is just like curious, because it is such a like disruptor and really wakes people up and really is such a grounding experience that drops us into our bodies, that can really just remove all the doubt and the chatter of the mind and help us to come into that place of pure presence. So those are a few circumstances that I feel are good examples of when the Hapé could be a really good fit for someone. And then it really, again, comes back to knowing when and how, and really trusting and developing that relationship with the Hapé to know.
So I'll have one more question for you, and then we're going to open it up for a little bit of Q&A. We've had a lot of really good questions come in, and I want to make sure we have plenty of time to get to those. And so the closing question that I have is, through 4 visions, you're committed to ethical sourcing and supporting Indigenous communities. Can you share why this matters, and how practitioners can ensure that they're sourcing responsibly and supporting Indigenous communities who are working with and stewarding this sacred plant medicine?
Ethical sourcing is incredibly important when it comes to Hapé. Of course, when it comes to all ancestral botanicals and plant medicines, but Hapé specifically, especially at this time, because with this influx of interest in Hapé, there has also been a influx of differentiation in quality, and the amount of people who are producing Hapé that are not truly properly trained, initiated, and in relationship and in alignment with the traditional use and the practices of their people. You can go to, any market in Rio, and you'll find bottles of Hapé for sale, and they're sold in, plastic bottles, like soda pop bottles, and you can get a kilo of Hapé, and you can probably find that for $40. The problem is that Hapé could be from many, many different places. And there's so many things happening within this industry at this time that, not to scare us here, but just for us all to really understand the complexities of this. there's everyone from, Indigenous people who were not properly trained, who are, buying their tobacco from, wherever, not growing it themselves, and not properly making the medicines in any, highly initiated way, and just selling it for profit, to people who are growing or harvesting these medicines off like the side of a road, where who knows who has walked there, and utilizing medicines that they don't have permission to use, or without proper prayer and ritual preparation, to people who are cutting the hapé with other things and putting things that shouldn't be in the hapé, or utilizing plastic while they make the hapé. And there's like a danger of microplastic being in this snuff that we're putting in our brain. And so there's so many things happening in this, Wild West time of the hapé. And so it's more important than ever to source our medicine from true stewards of these traditions, who are not only in right relationship with their cultures and traditions, but are really, very bravely protecting the intended use of the medicine, and have spent years and years and years studying this art of cultivation. Because, similar how wine is like an art, hapé is an art with a culture and a tradition, and there's prayers and rituals that need to go into it to for it to hold and withstand its potency and prayer. And so you can imagine, going back to that original topic at the beginning of like, can tobacco harm or can it hurt? You can imagine utilizing hapé that hasn't been prepared with good intention, and with respect for the earth, with respect for the tradition and the plants, how that hapé would not carry the same vibration or frequency. And it could also even be damaging or dangerous to someone who's working with it. So it's so important to source the medicine with awareness that all of these things can be present, and to know where you're getting your hapé from. And so at Four Visions, we've made it one of our missions to not only source the highest quality of hapé, but to really hold that standard as this market develops, and as hapé becomes more and more accessible, that we can really hold that bar very, very high, and encourage all people who work with hapé to not only understand and value the need for this high source and standard for ethical sourcing, but to really call into integrity everyone else who sources it, and really invite this to be the only way in which we work with this ancient plant medicine.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for all of that context, Mariah. There's a lot of questions about sourcing hapé, and we just dropped a link to Four Visions. Four Visions does have various products, including hapé. And so you can go to Four Visions. I made the offer available. We have a discount code that will get you 15% off any Four Visions products. Third Wave 15. That's one word. Third Wave 15. So just open that as a tab. You can get 15% off Four Visions products with this code if you yourself want to begin to work with hapé. Now, one other thing that I'll also mention is Mariah is a faculty in our upcoming practitioner training program. And we have our next cohort that is starting in a few months. It's going to be starting early 2026. And you can find out the details about that training program at the link that I provided. We have a lot of alumni, as I mentioned, who are joining us today. So check out Four Visions, check out PCI and what we're up to. And I want to get into questions now, because we've had a lot of really great questions that have come through, and we won't have time for all of them. But I think one of the core ones that I've been seeing is about addiction, and when to know when a relationship with hapé might be maybe a little overboard, a little too much, a little too often. How do we sort of have that sense for ourselves with the clients that we're working with, especially because of how powerful tobacco and how addictive nicotine can be? How do we navigate that relationship?
Is a very important question, and something that anyone who works with hapé should have at the forefront of their awareness in their relationship with it. And so really what I believe it comes down to is how we approach our encounter with the hapé. So we've spoken a lot today about the need to really create ritual and ceremony and prayer behind it. From the moment that the hapé is poured into your palm, you are dialoguing and connecting with the spirit of the tobacco. And so it is a moment to set your prayers and intentions, to express gratitude, to really get clear on why you are communing with the hapé at this time, and to apply yourself with that same amount of presence, and to give yourself that space to really receive the messages and the guidance and the healing that the hapé has for you in that moment. When it comes to the point where there is habitual hapé use, we have to be very honest with ourselves here. And I believe it to be something that is a very personal thing that each person has to take responsibility for when they're utilizing hapé. So if you notice you're falling into this place of habitual use where that ceremonial context and prayer and intention isn't happening, that is a good time to reevaluate your relationship with the hapé. There are a few different ways that I typically will recommend proceeding once you've realized that there might be some addictive tendencies coming with the hapé, because again, I don't feel that this addictiveness is something that we should shy away from. It's a teacher. This medicine is teaching us about our own patterns, where we look for comfort, where we look to escape, where we look to cope. And we're always doing that, whether it be with coffee, sugar, food, television, social media, right? We're always looking for that. So if we notice that within the hapé, it's an opportunity to bring awareness. It's an opportunity to bring compassion and to take action out of respect for the tobacco and out of respect to the hapé and the cultures and the traditions that it comes from. So if you notice that or observe that in yourself, it's recommended to take a break. It can be a week, 2 weeks, a month, longer. You'll know when you have had that realignment with the hapé. And when you're in this break, I'll often refer to it as a spiritual diet, where you're actually dieting the hapé. But it's not from this place of, oh, I don't want to think about the hapé anymore. It's bad because I fell into that pattern of addiction or habitual use of it, so it must be bad. No, it's from a place of respect. It's from a place of wanting to come back into alignment with the spirit of tobacco, with reverence for its power. And so you can utilize tobacco in the form of plant baths, making yourself baths of tobacco leaves or broken up cigars. And you boil the tobacco, you make like a tea out of it, and you pour it over the body while you're in this diet every single day for the diet, with this prayer of coming back into alignment with the spirit of the tobacco. You can also make offerings to the earth with the hapé. A really important thing that you can do if you're noticing that you're having this habitual use is you can go and give the remaining amount of medicine that you have to the earth with the prayer that it realigns you and comes back into harmonious, respectful relationship with the spirit of the hapé. And then you take a break for a time and you place in your prayers and your altar this intention of like coming back into integrity, coming back into right relationship. And then after a time passes, you can work with the hapé again with that intention, and always being vigilant to be aware if that habitual tendency comes back into your relationship with the hapé, and taking necessary steps if it does. So in this way, if you do it like I'm explaining, the hapé actually becomes a massively powerful teacher to teach us about our own addictive qualities and our escape mechanisms. That being said, it's very easy to say that we have all seen people utilize hapé in a poor way, in a way that isn't respectful. And so it's easy to blame the hapé. But the truth is that just because we're working with it in this way and we're willing to see how we're utilizing it and be completely honest and transparent with ourselves, that doesn't mean someone else is going to be. And it's not necessarily your responsibility to change how another person carries or works with this medicine. That's between them and the spirit of the plant. And the best thing for you is to ensure that your integrity with the spirit of the plant is always there and present, and to really care for that relationship relationship. And of course, when you're applying other people, if you get to that place where you're facilitating the Hapé, it's also a responsibility that we have to explain and properly introduce someone to the spirit of this medicine so that they truly understand the necessities surrounding the container and how to utilize it. This topic of, the addictiveness and how to treat habitual use could be its own topic of a webinar, like in totality. It's so profound. And after working with this medicine for over 12 years, I have received a tremendous amount of teachings on this particular theme from the tobacco itself, where I myself have also gone through my periods of diets, of understanding this within my own self, studying it, learning about it. So I do have a lot to share. And the one thing that I would say is that if we're radically honest with the spirit of the tobacco, then it can be utilized as a vehicle for our transformation and our healing through this topic of addictiveness, coping, and escapism. And it's very, very powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really important to emphasize. I'm going to keep moving. So we have another question about initiation. This has come up a couple different times. Is initiation required for maybe a shamanic or indigenous elder or a experienced practitioner into Hapé before we start serving? How do you think about the role of initiation for practitioners who want to work with Hapé?
That's really a personal decision. And I can't speak to that, as it pertains to everyone. The biggest thing I can really stress is that this is a medicine that really does require a personal relationship, first and foremost, as a fundamental foundation before you even think about serving someone else. When you go to apply someone else, your energy is literally passing from the vehicle of the spiritual vessel of your mouth into the tepi and going into the energy and the energetic body of the other person. So it's an incredibly intimate experience that requires a tremendous amount of training, of understanding of the way energies work within shamanic spaces. And if we're doing it, without that awareness and training, then it can be harmful, especially if we're not having good thoughts or we're not aware of the energy that we're giving this other person. And so there's so many delicacies around serving someone else, and it requires really, knowing what you're doing. Now, that whether you need to be initiated by a traditional indigenous medicine person to be able to serve Hapé to someone else or not, that's for each person to determine within themselves. But I really encourage everyone to be honest with yourself when it comes to this medicine, and let that honesty and your own compass of integrity determine whether or not it's time for you to serve someone else.
So another question we're getting is about storage and shelf life, right? Like, how long can we hold on to Hapé? How long does it last? I've seen some people chime in saying after a year, it's good to offer it back up and support the indigenous communities by purchasing again. I've had Hapé sometimes for 2 or 3 years, and I just keep it in a dark, dry place. I think that's the most dark, dry room temperature place is the most important thing. But how do you approach sort of storage and shelf life and things like that?
Hapé does not go bad or rancid, so you don't have to worry about like an expiration date. But generally speaking, after about a year, it loses potency and freshness. So it is generally recommended after about a year to give the medicine back to the earth and get yourself some fresh Hapé that is, imbued with fresh prayer and spirit of the land. So that's generally our recommendation on that. And yes, cool, dry place for storage for sure.
This is a good question. Let's say someone is having a challenging reaction to Hapé. They start to shake. They start to vomit all over. I've been with people with Hapé, and they're knocked out for 3 or 4 hours, and they can't really get up off the couch because it's so intense. As a practitioner or someone who is serving this medicine, how can we support people who might be navigating very challenging situations with this medicine?
Yeah, I think that's where the training really comes in, as far as, what tools you have in your toolbox. And so for us, we would recommend different botanical tools to support and nourish and hold the container of the space. So whether it be smudging the space, helping to ensure that throughout this person's process, the energy of the space continues to stay light and clear, moving things out, whether it be applying a healing lotion or a floral water to the person so that they feel the sweetness of the aroma lifting them and helping them to move through the intensity of what they're experiencing, whether it be praying over a glass of water and giving them some water to hydrate and help them to connect with the spirit of the water. There's so many different ways in which, you can support someone, putting on music or playing music, singing a song, offering a prayer. So it really comes down to what tools are in your toolbox and what tools you have to utilize when it comes to holding a ceremonial space for someone. And really the biggest thing that you can do to support is to really just honor the intensity of what they're going through and acknowledge that it's a profound experience that they're having, to not rush them through it or to make them feel like it's taking too long or they shouldn't be feeling like this anymore, but rather to just assure them, help them to feel safe, help them to feel that the experience that they're having is normal, it's beautiful, it's a blessing from the medicine, and really just holding that place of safety and support throughout what they go through and helping them to nourish. And then, as they're coming back, they're obviously grounding tools that you can utilize to help them to come back into their body once they're able to sit up, getting them to sit on the earth or put their feet on the earth, having them, drink something, whether it be electrolytes or a tea with honey in it to just kind of come back into their body and hydrate. All these kind of typical post-ceremony things can be really supportive to complete the process and help them to come through. And then the last part is, if someone has an experience like that, they might need to talk to you about it afterwards, and so being open to processing that and helping them to make sense of what their experience was like, what were they feeling? Because one thing about these medicines is that whatever happens with the medicine is always a reflection of what's happening in our lives. So if someone is having heaviness or stagnancy, or they just feel horrible for hours, where in their lives are they going through periods where they feel this on a regular basis? And we can always return back to this beautiful mirror that the plants give us to reflect on the greater context of our lives, and really just encouraging insight, reflection, so that we can always get the fullness of the teachings that the Hapé has to give us in that particular experience. And from that lens, we can always receive a lot from these experiences, even if they're really strong.
I mean, we could go another hour, Mariah. That's how many incredible questions. We have questions
Yeah.
about women's health. We have questions about how do we actually serve, eye contact, prayer, ritual. We have questions about being a hollow bone versus, as a practitioner, bringing our own intention. I think what's clear from this is we're going to have to do another. One for Hapé. And so I really appreciate all of you showing up today and bringing your presence, all these great questions and engagement. Mariah, I so appreciate you taking the time to join us and share a little bit about Hapé today. This has been a very illuminating conversation, and I really look forward to our next one that we get to do together as a collaboration between Four Visions and Third Wave, the Psychedelic Coaching Institute. So thank you so much for everything you offer today. And folks, it was really great to have all of you. Thank you for joining us for today's workshop.